Audie Murphy was the most decorated American soldier of World War II, a man who faced death on the battlefield and came home a national hero. But when he stepped into Hollywood, he quickly discovered that the world of movie stars and fame was nothing like the brotherhood of the front lines. Murphy was respected by millions, admired by his peers, and known for his humility. Yet beneath his calm exterior, he carried a deep resentment, not toward his enemies in war, but toward a fellow Hollywood star. This wasn't just rivalry or jealousy. It was a hatred rooted in Murphy's unwavering code of honor, and it would last the rest of his life. Today, we uncover the story of the one man Audie Murphy truly hated more than anyone, and why this feud reveals more about Murphy's character than any medal ever could. Audie Murphy's story is one that has been told countless times, but rarely with the focus on the man behind the medals. Born into poverty in Texas in 1925, Murphy grew up in a family so poor that hunger was a daily companion. He was small, underfed, and often bullied, hardly the image of the war hero he would become. Yet those hardships forged a quiet toughness that would later define him on and off the battlefield. When World War II broke out, Murphy was still a teenager, but he was determined to serve. Rejected by both the Navy and Marines for being underweight and undersized, he finally found his way into the U.S. Army with the help of falsified documents about his age. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Murphy went on to become the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II, earning every military combat award for valor available from the United States, as well as honors from France and Belgium. His bravery reached near mythical levels, with one of his most famous moments being when he single-handedly held off a German company while wounded and outnumbered. By the time he was honorably discharged, Murphy had become not just a soldier, but a living legend. Hollywood quickly came calling. With his rugged good looks, natural charisma, and real-life hero status, Murphy was offered a chance to play himself in the film To Hell and Back, 1955, based on his own memoir. The movie became one of Universal's biggest box office hits of its time and cemented Murphy's place as both a war hero and a film star. But behind the glory and fame, Murphy struggled with inner demons. He suffered from what we now understand as severe PTSD, though back then it was referred to as battle fatigue or shell shock. He experienced nightmares, insomnia, and bursts of rage, often keeping a loaded pistol under his pillow for protection against imagined threats. While he tried to mask these struggles with charm and professionalism, those who knew him best recognized that Murphy was a man scarred by war in ways that no medal or movie could erase. It was in Hollywood, a place filled with egos, rivalries, and manipulation, that Murphy's personal battles often came to a head. Though he was respected by many, there were a few individuals who rubbed him the wrong way, sparking tensions that would last years. Despite his reputation as a loyal friend and a humble star, Murphy had a strong sense of honor and a short temper when crossed. And while he was not known for carrying grudges lightly, there was one man in particular who pushed him beyond the limits of patience, someone Murphy reportedly truly hated more than anyone else. That clash, as we'll uncover in the coming chapters, was not just a matter of clashing personalities, but a collision of values. Murphy, a man who valued loyalty, courage, and honesty, found himself up against someone who embodied the very traits he despised. For all of Audie Murphy's humility and discipline, there was one figure in Hollywood whose very presence seemed to ignite his anger: actor and fellow World War II veteran, Victor Mature. At first glance, the feud between the two men seemed almost inevitable. Murphy, a decorated soldier who lived through the horrors of real combat, had little patience for what he saw as arrogance, exaggeration, and cowardice. Mature, on the other hand, was a charismatic star who often carried himself with an air of bravado, despite a reputation for avoiding anything that might put him in real danger. The tension between them reportedly began with comments Mature made during and after the war. While Murphy risked his life repeatedly in Europe, Mature served stateside and was sometimes mocked in Hollywood circles for his refusal to join combat units. Murphy, who valued courage and sacrifice above all else, saw Mature's attitude as insulting to every man who had fought on the front lines. This was not a matter of petty jealousy for Murphy. It was about honor, and he believed Mature embodied the opposite of what true heroism represented. Their paths collided more directly in Hollywood when studios began pairing war veterans with patriotic film projects. Murphy, whose real-life experiences gave him authenticity, was often considered for the same types of roles Mature was cast in: tough, heroic figures in war dramas and action films. Industry gossip suggested that Mature privately dismissed Murphy as a soldier trying to play actor, a remark that cut deep for someone who had literally lived the parts others only pretended to portray. Murphy never forgot it. Friends later recalled that any time Mature's name was mentioned, Murphy's demeanor would harden. Unlike other actors he occasionally clashed with, Murphy's dislike of Mature was visceral. He reportedly said, "He's everything I can't stand in a man, a coward who pretends to be brave." For Murphy, who had carried wounded men off the battlefield and seen friends die in his arms, Mature's swagger was an unforgivable insult. The press occasionally fanned the flames, comparing the two men in features about Hollywood's war heroes. Murphy resented the way the media gave equal weight to Mature's carefully curated image and his own blood-earned reputation. He was not one to brag, but he also could not stomach what he saw as false valor. Their feud never turned into a public shouting match, but insiders knew it simmered for years. Murphy refused to work with Mature, and on at least 2 occasions, he walked away from projects when he learned Mature had been considered for a role. To Murphy, the man wasn't just a rival. He represented a distortion of everything Murphy fought to protect: courage, sacrifice, and truth. This hatred stood out because Murphy was not known for bitterness. He had plenty of personal struggles, but he rarely spoke badly about others in public. The fact that he reserved such strong words for Mature said everything about the depth of his feelings. It wasn't about jealousy of fame or money. It was about respect, and Murphy felt Mature never earned his. In the end, their animosity became one of those whispered Hollywood stories, a clash of 2 very different men whose lives had intersected under the bright lights of the movie industry. But for Murphy, it was no small matter. This was personal, and his disdain for Victor Mature lingered until the very end of his life. Audie Murphy's animosity toward Victor Mature wasn't just about 2 men disliking each other. At its core, it highlighted the deeper conflict Murphy carried with Hollywood itself, a clash between illusion and reality. Murphy had lived through the mud, blood, and terror of combat. He had faced death countless times, watching friends fall beside him in foxholes and fields. No camera, no script, no retake could ever capture the raw truth of war he carried inside. Hollywood, however, thrived on the opposite. It was a town built on make-believe, where image mattered more than substance, and where actors like Victor Mature could be marketed as war heroes without ever having stepped onto a battlefield. To Murphy, that was a bitter pill to swallow. He wasn't jealous of Mature's fame. He was disgusted by what he saw as the exploitation of sacrifice. This resentment often bled into Murphy's career, even as he starred in war films, including the critically acclaimed To Hell and Back. He struggled with the artificial nature of the industry. Murphy once admitted that reenacting battle scenes made him feel uneasy, even guilty, because he knew audiences were being entertained by something. That had been the worst reality of his life. While other actors played at being soldiers, Murphy had nightmares of real battles that never left him. Victor Mature represented everything that gnawed at Murphy's conscience. Mature's larger-than-life presence, his willingness to embrace the spotlight, and his indifference to how real veterans viewed him only deepened the divide. Hollywood adored Mature's charm and screen appeal, but Murphy saw through it as empty bravado, an insult to the men who had truly earned their scars. Insiders reported that Murphy could be prickly when asked about Mature. At parties or gatherings, if someone brought up Mature's name, Murphy often changed the subject or muttered sharp remarks under his breath. Friends described it less as petty hatred and more as principled disdain. Murphy wasn't one to lash out publicly, but when it came to Mature, his feelings were impossible to hide. This feud also underscored Murphy's inner conflict with fame. Despite being one of the most decorated soldiers in American history, Murphy was uncomfortable with his celebrity. He preferred privacy, disliked interviews, and lived modestly compared to other stars of his era. Mature, by contrast, basked in fame, moving through Hollywood's elite circles with confidence and indulgence. The contrast between their lifestyles only fueled Murphy's distrust of the system and his disdain for those, like Mature, who embodied it. It's worth noting that Murphy's hatred of Mature wasn't universally shared. Many in Hollywood respected Mature as a professional and enjoyed his company. But for Murphy, this wasn't about popularity contests. It was about authenticity. To him, Mature's persona was the epitome of Hollywood's shallow obsession with appearances, a world Murphy never felt comfortable in. Ultimately, this deep divide reflected Murphy's ongoing struggles with post-war trauma. Hollywood expected him to play the hero, smile for the cameras, and attend premieres, but inside, he was still carrying the weight of the battlefield. Seeing someone like Mature celebrated for pretending to be what Murphy actually was only sharpened his pain. It wasn't just professional rivalry. It was a reminder of how misunderstood and often invisible real sacrifice could be in a world obsessed with glamour. By the late 1950s, Murphy had built a reputation not just as a war hero turned actor, but as a man who valued loyalty and truth above all else. And in that world, Victor Mature stood as the symbol of everything he despised, making him, without question, the one man Audie Murphy truly hated more than anyone. By the time Audie Murphy reached the later years of his career, the hostility he felt toward Victor Mature had become less about one man and more about what Mature represented. For Murphy, this wasn't a petty grudge. It was a symbolic line drawn between two ways of living, one rooted in real sacrifice and loyalty, and the other in showmanship and pretense. While Mature thrived in Hollywood's illusion, Murphy lived with the permanent scars of truth. Friends close to Murphy noted that he was never one to dwell on hatred, but Mature was the rare exception. Unlike other colleagues with whom he might have had minor disputes, Mature's very name brought out a visceral reaction. It wasn't that Murphy obsessed over him, but rather that he carried a principled anger, a belief that Mature's kind of heroism cheapened the meaning of the word. To Murphy, war was not a costume, not a script, and certainly not a way to boost one's reputation. It was blood, fear, and survival. As the years passed, Murphy grew increasingly isolated. Despite his continued acting roles, he remained a reluctant celebrity, rarely indulging in Hollywood's glamour. He invested much of his energy into raising awareness about post-traumatic stress disorder, long before it was widely recognized. He openly spoke about his nightmares, insomnia, and struggles, trying to ensure other veterans didn't suffer in silence as he had. In many ways, his feud with Mature became just one piece of a larger story. Murphy's unyielding demand for authenticity in a world built on facades. Victor Mature, for his part, never engaged publicly in the feud. He enjoyed a long career, often cast in swashbuckling or heroic roles, seemingly untouched by Murphy's disdain. To outsiders, the contrast between the two men was stark. Mature embodied Hollywood escapism, while Murphy represented the raw, sobering reality of war and sacrifice. They were destined to clash because their lives, their values, and their truths were fundamentally incompatible. When Murphy tragically died in a plane crash in 1971 at the age of just 45, the nation mourned the loss of a true hero. Tributes poured in from veterans, politicians, and Hollywood colleagues alike. Yet for those who knew him best, his legacy was not just about his medals or his films. It was about his unshakable sense of honor, his unwillingness to compromise on values, and his readiness to call out those who he felt betrayed the very idea of bravery. The story of Audie Murphy and Victor Mature is more than a feud. It's a window into Murphy's character. He wasn't a man interested in Hollywood rivalries or petty disputes. He simply could not stomach what he saw as false valor. And in Mature, he saw the embodiment of that. It explains why, among all the people he met in his short but extraordinary life, Victor Mature became the one man he reportedly truly hated more than anyone else. In the end, Murphy's life remains a testament to authenticity in a world that often values illusion. His legacy lives on not only in the history books of World War II, but also in the reminder that real courage cannot be faked, and real heroes never need to pretend.